Hi, everybody. Welcome. It is
Hey
Kelly and
there.
Arthur
Hi.
Lupshaw. We are here bringing you our podcast of becoming the CEO of your own health, right? Like today is a special day because Arthur and I are really passionate about brain health.
Yeah, this is a huge topic that, we feel has been very underserved on a global level, and something that has touched us directly.
Absolutely. It's truly been like our jam as our background of physical therapist, initially treating stroke and brain injury survivors, but really looking at neurodegenerative diseases of the brain. And
Yeah.
specifically, we're really talking about the disease of Alzheimer's. So in that, what I think is exciting is over the past 10 years, so much research has been flooding in about all the new things that can be helpful.
Yeah, and at the same time, Kelly, over the past probably 20, 30 plus years, there's been an awful lot of research that has shown that there's a lot of things that aren't very helpful. That we don't have the Band-Aid, we don't have the magic pill. There is no drug that is successfully treating Alzheimer's. So it's there's really so much more that we have to take a deeper dive, and it's really going back into finding root cause again, and how can we not fix this problem, but how can we prevent this problem from ever happening?
Oh my gosh, you guys. And so who's out there? Do you guys have a loved one that's been affected? And I know personally in our life. So my grandmother, my father's mom, she was diagnosed late in life. But as we're realizing, these disease processes have probably started over 20, 30, 40
Yeah.
years. And so we saw it with my grandmother when she was in her 80s. I was fortunate at the end of her life, she still was able to recognize me, but she got to that point that she really struggled in day-to-day life and understanding, remembering. And it was devastating to see how that happened and how it affected not only her life, but the life of my aunt and all of us in the family. And then recently, it affects Arthur and I, if you guys don't know, because we take care of Arthur's father and he has Alzheimer's. And it really, when you live with it on a day-to-day basis, it brings it to the forefront of how miserable and awful the disease is.
Yeah, it really robs people of being able to truly live their life, because the entire family knows he's not the same man today that he was even 5, 6 years ago.
Yes. So the exciting news is you guys, today we're going to bring you really some like what to do, basic steps, because I don't think there's a single person out there that wouldn't want to upgrade their brain.
Yeah, so really, Kelly, let's really dive into, brain health and all the information we've been learning about this horrendous disease and what we can do to maybe not go down that same road that our grandparents or our parents have now walked.
Truly. And we are learning from some of the best out there. And one of them, Dr. Dale Bredesen, this is what he is stating, that, this is a disease of the 21st century. And right now it is the third leading cause of death behind heart disease and diabetes.
Yeah. Can you imagine? And that's in the US.
That is in
Third
the
leading
US.
cause of death in the US behind heart disease and diabetes is Alzheimer's. Wow.
5.5 million people in the US are going to be affected. So this is what he states, which I found was fascinating, because most people, the number one thing of their health is like a cognitive decline. They're worried, right, about cognitive decline. That moving forward in the future, this will be a disease of the past.
Much like other things, like, right, polio, smallpox, measles. These are diseases we really don't think about anymore. And we need to understand that Alzheimer's is one of those diseases that we can truly eradicate, but it's going to take some lifestyle changes.
Huge lifestyle changes. And I think traditional medicine, and again, Arthur and I grew up in this model of, traditional modern medicine, is you look at what will fix the problem. And so I think that's where we have failed, not only with this disease, but many diseases of autoimmune chronic diseases, is that we're looking for the one thing. What's the pill, the thing that's going to fix it?
Right.
But ultimately, it's so multifactorial that we're missing the boat.
Yeah.
Which is also a reason that it's extremely hard to study, because you have to consider so many different factors. And traditional research likes to look at one variable at a time.
Yeah, I mean, to the point where we were actually listening to a podcast recently of Dr. Dale Bredesen's, where he was getting turned down. Permission was being declined for him to do certain studies because he wasn't limiting his variables to only one that he was looking at, but he was trying to look at a very comprehensive study. So just crazy how our scientific model works today, and really how, unfortunately, misleading it can become when you put that many constraints on a study.
Yes, yes. So here's some things to consider, and the link maybe wasn't brought to the forefront before, but really living a life of less inflammatory.
Yeah, yeah. So, it's so interesting that this whole, so many people talk about inflammation, right? But inflammation happens not only like in your muscles and your joints, it happens in your cells, in your tissue. And that inflammatory process just sets up this cascade of events that break down your body.
And so people are, a lot of times getting insulin resistant.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting metabolic disorder. People are having things like, hypertension. Or in your life, maybe you're living a life extremely stressful and anxious.
And the other root part of this, Kelly, with all this inflammation is then the leaky gut issues.
Oh my gosh.
Inflammation of the gut, leaky gut issues that can lead to, as you said already, autoimmune issues. It's this horrible cycle of events.
And other things, this should be like not a shocker, right? Not an overall, but things in your household, whether it's chemicals, toxins, your cleaners, mold exposure is a huge one for increasing your toxic load. Maybe you're renting a house, or even you bought a house that you have no idea behind that refrigerator 10, 20 years ago, there was water leak.
Yeah, water damage.
And there's mold growing back in there. So you can have your house checked. There's a lot of different tests that you can, that you can bring in to look and see. But to be honest, even when you're buying a house, and I didn't know this the last time we bought our houses, the mold inspectors that come in, they're just generally looking. They're not taking a deep dive.
Superficial look, right? Just what's on the surface. And guys, if mold is already on the surface, you got a huge problem, right?
Huge problem. Yeah. So, and things just like stress and sleep and things like that in your life. But we really wanted to just kind of like bring a couple studies to the forefront, because in looking at these few studies, it seems so simple, you guys. That's the wild thing, is it just seems so simple, right?
Yeah.
And the first one, and maybe I think for all of you out there, it's easy to not even want to listen to this podcast, because it's like, oh, it's not me, or I'm only 30 or 40 or 50. So why would I have to worry about this in my life today? Right. What would you say about that, Arthur?
Well, Kelly, what our listeners really need to understand is that what you're doing to your body in your 20s, 30s, 40s, even in your 50s is setting you up for where you're going to be in your 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond. These processes can take 20, 30, 40 years to really show up in your body. So you can be creating an inflammatory situation in your 20s, which then is giving you problems in your 60s and 70s.
Oh, so you mean like now? I mean, like I already should have been paying attention.
We should have been paying attention 20 and 30 years ago.
Yes. So I think that's hard, right? Because it's not like, oh, I should wear my seatbelt. I got in a car accident. The seatbelt protected me. This is like years and slow.
It's slow, but I think there's some good news in here too, Kelly, is that even though maybe we in our late 40s and early 50s didn't know to look at these things 20 years ago, so much of the damage we did can still be reversed. So we can actually reset our systems. Will it be as good as if we started in our 20s? Probably not. Let's be honest, probably not. But we can certainly be far better off than if we don't take any of these measures now, right? If we don't change anything, then, oh my gosh, where are we going to be by the time we're 70 and 80 years old? So why not take those intervening steps right now and really stack the odds in our favor to have the best future possible?
So true. So for any of you like science geeks out there, it's a little bit up our alley, but even I'm going to keep it on a very basic level. We just want to share with you 3 simple studies that you might really want to consider. Oh, maybe that's why I should change this in my life. So this first study came out of the Journal of Neurology, and most studies are not this long. This actually was over a 24-year period. That's pretty
Wow,
profound, right?
that's crazy. Yeah.
So what it did is it took hundreds of people in their 40s and 50s, and they were tracking their blood markers of elevated markers of inflammation.
Yeah.
Okay. And what they found at the end of that 24 years is that those people that lived a life with a lot of inflammatory, right, things in their life, they had a much higher risk of developing Alzheimer's in the future. Isn't that wild? So the takeaway message is really just living that life of less inflammatory, because I think we all know at this point there's no drug.
Yeah.
But yet this is preventable.
Yeah.
That's what's so fascinating. So
Yeah.
there's really that direct relationship to inflammation and increased cognitive decline.
The second study I want to bring to you guys is actually one that was published in the Journal of Alzheimer's, and it was done by a Dr. Rosebud Roberts.
I love that.
Yeah, Rosebud. Dr. Rosebud Roberts. Thank you, Dr. Roberts, for doing this study. She's out of the Mayo Clinic.
My alma mater.
That's
love
right.
it. Giving a shout out there to the Mayo Clinic.
And what she was looking at was the correlation between what people ate and their risk for dementia. And this is quite fascinating. And what she found was people who had a diet that was high in fat had a 46% lower risk for developing dementia.
Okay, did you guys hear that? Higher
46%.
fat. Eating higher fat.
Yeah.
So those of us who used to think fat was bad, right? Remember, dietary fat is amazing. Our body, we've been eating it for centuries and centuries.
Okay, but here's the kicker, Kelly, because they also looked at people with high carbohydrate diets.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, those high carbs. And what they found is people who had a diet that was high in carbohydrates had an 83% increase in their risk for dementia.
Oh my gosh.
So, why has this changed so much, right? Why are so many people eating these high carb diets today? Because really, with the agricultural revolutions and how we've changed the way we mass produce food for people, we really did a wonderful job convincing, right, moms and the population through the 50s, 60s, and 70s that, start your day off with that sugary cereal, have more energy.
It's all about energy, right? You need to set the day right, give your kids energy out the door. And lo and behold, here came cereal and bagels and Pop-Tarts and sweet muffins. And
but really, we know today that all of that sugar is just super inflammatory. All those carbohydrates are super inflammatory. And those are not the things that we as human beings were ever designed to consume. Right. Mm-hmm. So so that second study I thought was really fascinating too.
So takeaway, you guys, get your dietary fats. Take a look at what you're eating, up your dietary fats, and decrease your carbohydrates. That's pretty simple.
Yep.
So the third study is I love, because I'm a exerciser, and for my life, running has been me, although I'm learning to balance that with weight training and other activities in my lifestyle today.
Now, I like to exercise too. I'm just not a runner.
Yes. So this is the study. What they were looking at is they took a group of people and divided them up into two groups. One was an aerobic exercise group, and the second one did stretching.
Yeah, just stretching.
Just stretching. So it wasn't really getting your heart rate up. It wasn't aerobic. Okay. So it took a year, and they were looking at three different things in that time period. Is what would their memory like? They looked at MRI of their brain, of the memory center, of actually the hippocampus. And the third thing that they were looking at is this molecule of protein
in the
of
body.
BDNF. You don't need to know all of that, okay? It's brain-derived neurotropic factor, but BDNF, it's a special protein. And what the study found after a year is the group that just did stretching actually had lower cognition on the memory test. And when they looked at MRI, their brain centers was smaller in that hippocampus area looking on MRI. And their level of BDNF was decreased. So that's really, really important, because BDNF allows us to have it stimulates neurogenesis in the
Yep.
brain, and specifically into the hippocampus, excuse me. So the exercise group of aerobic exercise was the exact opposite. They had increased memory on their memory test. On MRI, they had a bigger center in the hippocampus, and their levels of BDNF were way up, way up. So we need to exercise. That BDNF is critically important to your overall brain function, everyone. So just watch what you're eating, live a life of less inflammation, get some exercise.
How do we make this simple?
These are basics of the studies.
Let's really break this down, Kelly. How do we really make this simple? What should people be doing today, right?
Yes, and I'm going to, we talked about Dr. Dale Bredesen. I also want to give a lot of thanks to Dr. David Perlmutter. Arthur and I love him. There's been so many researchers, you guys, that are doing work in all this level of chronic diseases and neurodegenerative diseases. So thank you out there.
And also Dr. Mark Hyman.
Oh my gosh.
Dr. Mark Hyman, functional medicine, we're huge fans of the work he's doing and the information he puts out there. Please, I would encourage you guys, follow any of these guys. They're incredible, incredible, incredible people.
So we're going to leave you with, what do you do today? Takeaway, right?
Yep. Okay. So really simple. Number one, first and foremost, you got to cut the carbs and the sugars out of your diet. I mean, drastically reduce the carbs and sugars. Now, I'm a guy, I do believe in some moderation, right? But carbs and sugars, we eat way, way, way too much. You've got to bring them down, and be careful of those hidden sources of sugars, right? I mean, sugars are snuck into all kinds of foods. Even things that are labeled as like health foods often have higher amounts of carbohydrates and sugars in them. It's the simple sugars, it's the processed carbs that can be a real problem.
Yeah, and sometimes we think it's like, oh, this is organic honey, or this is, I don't know, maple syrup from wherever, right?
Yeah.
It's sugar.
It's still sugar.
It's hard to believe, but we're coming to
understand
to believe it and understand it. It's all sugar. Cut it out. And the other is, we're really welcoming fats back to the table.
Got to bring those fats back in, right, Kelly? And what are good fats? What are the fats we should be looking at? I mean, we're talking about things like olive oil, avocado oil, fresh avocados, right?
Yes, nuts and seeds,
wild-caught fish, grass-fed beef, eggs.
Eggs
are a great source, but free-range eggs, guys. Mm-hmm. Free range is also a vital component of that.
And what I have learned, I think Arthur and I both, through actually even looking at your meat, is advertising is crazy. Mm-hmm. So even though it can say grass-fed, it can be grass-fed one time and still be called grass-fed. So do really, research where you're getting your meat, that it should be grass-fed and grass-finished. And today we are not talking about specific diets or anything like that. We're just trying to give you some quick takeaways. So again, reduce your sugars, welcome back the fats to the table. And the third is move your body.
Yeah, get moving, guys.
Oh my gosh.
Moving.
Get that aerobic exercise, 20, 30 minutes, 5-6 times a week. Get your sunshine along the way.
Vitamin D, super important.
And you want to drive that BDNF up, right? I mean, the bottom line to all of this is we all want to have a long, healthy longevity health span.
Yep. Great vibrancy in our lives, right? And what is your life going to be like if you lose your cognitive abilities?
So we're not the researchers, but we are just passionate because we've seen the effects of it in the clients and the patients we've treated. Yep. We have family members that have affected our lives. And so with the millions of Americans this is affecting, we know that in some way yours is being affected too. So we hope this has been helpful. Find your couple of takeaways. First and foremost, thank you always for joining Arthur and I. It's truly a privilege and a pleasure to share. And thank you for subscribing. And we would love for you to give us a 5-star review. It is awesome. And share this with somebody else that you know that maybe would love to hear about this information today.
All right, guys.
So
thanks. Go out and kill it today, right?
You go out there and become the CEO of your health.
Bye.
Bye.